Welcome, dear friends. Today we dive deep into the pages of history and scripture to uncover one of the most formidable giants ever faced by the Israelites, Og, king of Bashan. Known for his colossal size and terrifying strength, Og was no ordinary adversary. He ruled over fertile lands east of the Jordan River and challenged Moses and his people during their quest for freedom. But fear not. With divine encouragement echoing through their hearts, Moses and his army stood firm against this giant threat. Discover how faith turned a seemingly impossible battle into a glorious victory. Join us on this epic journey through biblical history. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss our deep dives into these legendary tales. Let's unravel more about Og's incredible story together. Stay tuned as we reveal more dangerous giants from Scripture. Now, let's get started. According to the Bible, Og ruled over 60 fortified cities, all of which were conquered by the Israelites. This gave Israel more territory to occupy on the east side of the Jordan River, and it demonstrated to them that they could overcome the mighty enemies they would face on the west side of the Jordan River through the power of God. Deuteronomy 3, verses 3-7. So the Lord our God also gave into our hands Og, king of Bashan, and all his army. We struck them down, leaving no survivors. At that time we took all his cities. There was not one of the 60 cities that we did not take from them. The whole region of Argob, Og's kingdom in Bashan. All these cities were fortified with high walls, and with gates and bars, and there were also a great many unwalled villages. We completely destroyed them, as we had done with Sihon, king of Heshbon, destroying every city, men, women, and children. But all the livestock and the plunder from their cities we carried off for ourselves. Like Sihon, Og led his entire army into battle against Israel, and in the case of Sihon, God had already decided to hand over the king along with his whole army and land to Israel. Israel destroyed the entire population and took control of all 60 cities in Og's kingdom, which had the same high walls as Sihon. When God chose to hand over an enemy to his people, even strong fortified cities were no match for the enemy. In the future, when they arrive in Jericho, the most striking illustration of that reality would take place there. He was also a huge man with an iron bed that was 9 cubits long and 4 cubits wide, 5 feet long and 6 feet wide. The inclusion of this detail highlights Og's size. A man needing this size bed was most likely tall, 10 or 11 feet. Israel triumphed against Sihon and Og and took control of their extensive lands on the east bank of the Jordan River after they were vanquished. It was obvious that Og was not a weak ruler. Israel does not have any reason to be anxious regarding the size of its opponents. All that was required of them was to recall how powerful their God was. Deuteronomy 3, verse 11, Amplified Bible. For only Og, king of Bashan, was left of the remnant of the giants, known as the Rephaim. Behold, his bed frame was a bed frame of iron. Is it not in the rubber of the Amorites? It was 9 cubits, 12 feet long, and 4 cubits, 6 feet wide. Using the cubit of a man, the forearm to the end of the middle finger, his colossal beard had become famous, and no doubt had been saved as a memento. The news of the victory spread quickly, instilling fear in the hearts of those in Canaan. Rahab, a Jericho prostitute, believed the Lord had power even over that heavily fortified city, because she and others had heard of the victory over Sihon and Og. Joshua 2, verse 10, Amplified Bible. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the 2 kings of the Amorites, who were beyond the Jordan on the east, to Sihon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. Joshua 9, verses 9 to 10, Amplified Bible. They said to him, Your servants have come from a country that is very far away, because of the fame of the Lord your God. For we have heard the news about him, and all the remarkable things that he did in Egypt, and everything that he did to the 2 kings of the Amorites, who were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon, the king of Bashan, who lived in Ashtaroth. Moses used the victory to encourage the Israelites as he left them in charge of Joshua and about to enter Canaan, Deuteronomy 31, verse 4, Psalm 135, verses 7 to 11. Who causes the vapors to arise from the ends of the earth? Who makes lightnings for the rain? Who brings the wind out of his storehouses? Who smote the firstborn of Egypt, both of man and beast? Who sent signs and wonders into the midst of you, O Egypt, upon Pharaoh and all his servants? Who smote nations, many and great, and slew mighty kings, Sihon, king of the Amorites, Og, king of Bashan, and all the kingdoms of Canaan? Psalm 136, verses 18 to 20. And slew famous kings, for his mercy and loving kindness endure forever. Sihon, king of the Amorites, for his mercy and loving kindness endure forever. And Og, king of Bashan, for his mercy and loving kindness endure forever. According to Deuteronomy, Og was an offspring of the Rephites, indicating a man of great stature, a giant. Joshua 12, verse 4, Amplified Bible. And the territory of Og, king of Bashan, one of the remnant of the Rephaim, who lived at Ashtaroth and at Adrai. Og is referred to as the last of the Rephaim in Deuteronomy 3, verse 11, and later in the books of Numbers and Joshua. Rephaim is a Hebrew word for giants. The Rephaites, or Rephaim, were a people who lived in Canaan and elsewhere during Moses and Joshua's time. The term Rephaites is descriptive, not an ethnic one. It means terrible ones. The Rephaim were battle-hardened giants. When the Israelites first attempted to enter the Promised Land, spies reported that it was inhabited by giants known as Nephilim and sons of Anak. The repeated references to the Rephaim in these first 3 chapters demonstrate that Israel, when trusting in God, was more than capable of defeating this fearsome warrior race. It also demonstrates that their fear of these men was unfounded in Numbers 13, when they refused to enter the Promised Land. Their excuses are shown to be weaker in the light of the next generation's victories. Nothing is too difficult for God. Nothing is impossible for him. Matthew 19, verse 26. But Jesus looked at them and said, With man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. Number 2, Goliath. Goliath was a Philistine giant. The Philistines are the Israelites' foes, and they were gathered for a war at this time. It wasn't long ago that the Philistines were thoroughly beaten, but now they are making a comeback. They descended on Israelite territory and appeared to have taken possession of some of it as they camped in a Judah-controlled area. 1 Samuel 17, verses 1 to 3. Now the Philistines gathered their armies for battle, and were assembled at Soko, which belongs to Judah. And they camped between Soko and Azekar in Epestimim. Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together. And they camped in the valley of Elah, and assembled in battle formation to meet the Philistines. The Philistines were standing on the mountain on one side, and Israel was standing on the mountain on the other side, with the valley between them. The valley of Elah was more like a large canyon than a tiny valley. 1 Samuel 17, verse 4, Amplified Bible. Then a champion came out from the camp of the Philistines, named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. We don't understand precisely what that information means at face value, because we don't measure things by cubit or a span, and we count them by feet. So let's put it in terms we can understand. Goliath was a huge man, standing probably around 9 feet 9 inches tall, and if you add to his height the length of his arms, when he would lift them up over his head, you can imagine what an imposing creature he must have been. But it wasn't just his size. 1 Samuel 17, verses 5 to 7, Amplified Bible. He had a bronze helmet on his head, and he wore a coat of scale armor overlapping metal plates, which weighed 50 shekels of bronze. He had bronze javelin hung between his shoulders. The wooden shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam. The blade head of his spear weighed 600 shekels of iron. And a shield bearer walked in front of him. He was dressed in what we'd call a mail coat. The Philistines would get themselves ready for battle by donning a huge undergarment that resembled canvas and was covered in overlapping rings of bronze. This coat of mail shielded the wearer from the shoulders all the way down to the knees from the weapons used by the adversary. This particular style and size of body armor weighed 50 shekels of bronze, which is equivalent to between 175 and 200 pounds in modern standards. Goliath was armed with a bronze helmet, bronze leggings, greaves to protect his shins, and a bronze javelin, or spear, slung between his shoulders. These items were all made of bronze. Just the head of his spear was made of iron and weighed 600 shekels, which is around 20 to 25 pounds. According to the report that was written, he was accompanied by a shield carrier who walked in front of him. The Hebrew words that is being used here refer to the largest shield used in battle, which is large enough to protect a grown adult. It is very clear that its purpose was to protect his body from arrows fired by the enemy. So in addition to his body armor, Goliath had this guy racing in front of him, wielding a man-sized shield for further defense. Take a pause and allow your mind to imagine the impressive scene that you had just read about. Imagine the terror that you would feel if you had to face off against a behemoth of this size, who was also protected by this much armor. Undoubtedly, the odds are stacked against anyone foolish enough to face him in battle. Notice what this giant warrior did. 1 Samuel 17, verses 8 to 9, Amplified Bible. Goliath stood and shouted to the battle lines of Israel, saying to them, "Why have you come out to draw up for battle? Am I not the Philistine, and are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves, and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will become your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall become our servants and serve us." 1 Samuel 17, verses 10 to 16, Amplified Bible. Again, the Philistine said, "I defy the battle lines of Israel this day. Give me a man, so that we may fight together." When Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now David was the son of the Ephrathite of Bethlehem in Judah, named Jesse, who had 8 sons. Jesse was old in the days of Saul, advanced in years among men. His 3 older sons had followed Saul into battle. The name of his 3 sons who went into battle were Eliab, the firstborn, next Abinadab, and third Shammah. David was the youngest. Now the 3 oldest followed Saul, but David went back and forth from Saul to tend his father's flock at Bethlehem. The Philistine Goliath came out morning and evening and took his stand for 40 days. Goliath suggested a strategy popular in Eastern civilization, namely representative combat, or a one-on-one conflict. He'd be the Philistines' army's representative, while Israel's choice would be the Israelite army's representative.